Suddenly, the first copper golem came back to life, while its replacement got back to work. The golem had a lot of questions. When did it go to sleep? Where did it wake up? And how do you walk again? The copper golem suddenly heard a distant sound outside. The sound seemed familiar, though it wasn't quite sure why. The golem leaned in closer to listen. The golem picked itself up. As the weather began to clear, it looked around, taking in its surroundings. It spotted a house in the distance, with someone outside. They pressed a button to open a door and entered the building. Something about this seemed to awaken a memory within the copper golem, and with no other directive, it began marching towards the house. While it made its way across the valley, the golem looked with curiosity at some of the plants and animals. Everything seemed so familiar, yet still so strange and different. But it didn't stay distracted for long, as it had just arrived at the house. It gave the button a try, and as it had seen before, the door flung open, before eventually shutting. A certain sense of accomplishment seemed to fill the copper golem every time it pressed the button, almost as if this is what it was made for. As it continued repeatedly pushing, opening and closing the door, it started to remember its past. Suddenly, it was interrupted by that strange sound again. The golem peeked its head through the door to see what made the sound, when it saw something quite surprising. Inside the house, another copper golem was hard at work, sorting items into chests. This copper golem looked different from itself. It was a newer, sleeker design, and it was a bright orange, rather than the dingy brownish green the old golem had. Curious, the copper golem entered the house. The copper golem watched with fascination as the shiny copy of itself quickly scooped up items, spun toward its destination, and put them away. Somehow, it was able to know exactly where everything belonged, even if it had to check a few other chests before finding the right one. The golem approached, waving hello to the new friend. But rather than returning the gesture, it just looked the copper golem up and down before locking eyes into the pile of items and marching over to it. The copper golem was a bit surprised, but figured the other golem was too busy to respond. Clearly it had a very important job, and if this is what copper golems were made for, it was going to help sort the items as well. Unfortunately, the golem wasn't quite sure what it was even holding, much less where it was supposed to go. A thingamajig? A dinglehopper? It had no idea. Slowly carrying it over to the nearest chest, the golem pried open the lid to look inside, but was even more confused. Nothing it was looking at made it any clearer where the thing was supposed to go. Before the copper golem could make its decision, the item fell to the floor. Without skipping a beat, the other golem picked it up and sorted it effortlessly into a different chest, exactly where it was supposed to be. It watched the other golem work at a dizzying pace. It was clear to the copper golem that it would not be able to keep up with its new friend. So instead, it decided to see what else it could do to make itself useful. The copper golem introduced itself, ready to show what it could do. But the golem's dance confused them. They dropped another item on the ground, waiting for the golem to sort it away. But the item meant nothing to the copper golem. None of them did. So the golem dropped it back onto the ground and nodded toward a nearby button. The golem turned back to the person, beaming. The person now seemed even more confused, and this look of confusion only deepened with the golem's second click, then the third, and the fourth. The golem once again picks itself up, a bit shaken but not deterred. It was certain it could find some way to be of use to someone. The copper golem heard another strange sound, this one much more familiar than the last. The golem's eyes focused on the allay, following its every move. In that moment, it began to remember something.
Now it's time to see what mob you chose to add to the game. Hey Jens, do you have the results?
Yes.
And the winner is the LA.
The Copper Golem finally remembered. It lost the vote to the LA. The world stopped moving, and the Golem was unsure how it could bring itself to move again. Losing the vote meant being forgotten forever, cast aside, and never given a chance to prove your worth. As the years went by, more mob votes came and went, and as more losing creatures joined the Copper Golem in obscurity, the Golem slowly faded away, until it couldn't keep its lights on any longer. But things changed. Somehow the Copper Golem was able to return, and if the LA was able to find its purpose, then the Golem would follow. At first, the Golem couldn't quite tell what the LA was doing to be helpful. It just seemed to be following the other person around. Aha! These items didn't need to be sorted, they just needed to be picked up. Good, that seemed a lot easier. The Copper Golem hopped over to try the same. The Golem picked up as many items as it could, though before it was able to pass them to this person, they'd already moved so far away. So it tried to follow, grabbing even more items on the way. With each item the Golem picked up, it became more and more challenging to carry everything. Waddling over with its great stack of things, the Golem was so close to its goal. Then suddenly, just as it was arriving, the pair turned around, finding nothing but a pile of items and a very flustered Copper Golem. Trying to look the part, the Copper Golem pops back up without hesitation and extends out one of the items toward the person. The Golem let the item tumble to the floor. This time, it didn't feel confused. It knew this feeling all too well. This is what it felt like to lose. Despite trying to prove its worth, the Copper Golem just couldn't seem to make itself useful. Not compared to the LA, and especially not compared to the other Copper Golem. Maybe it should have been forgotten. Still frozen in time, on that old shelf. The Golem's thoughts were interrupted by a loud, grinding metal sound. The sound was coming from inside the house, so the Copper Golem moved to investigate. Inside, the Copper Golem found disarray. The items had begun piling up everywhere. It was a mess. And when it looked over to the other Golem, it was clear why. The newer Golem had lost its shiny orange sheen and was almost completely oxidized, and it was moving very slowly. Panicked, the Copper Golem rushed over to try to help, but the other Golem wouldn't respond. It nudged the Golem toward a chest with its items, but before it could begin to place it inside, it completely ground to a halt. The lights of its eyes flickered out. The other Golem was a statue. The Copper Golem began to panic as more items fell to the ground. It tried once again to sort the things itself, but it was no use. It had no idea where they were meant to go. There was nothing it could do. The thunder drew the Copper Golem's focus to the window, and it suddenly had an idea. It may not be able to fix this mess, but it knew someone who could. Without a second thought, it lifted the frozen Golem above its head and rushed out into the rain. The rain fell hard. It pounded repeatedly, covering the two as the Copper Golem held the statue into the air, hoping for a bit of luck. A flash of lightning blinded the Golem, but it didn't hit them. It turned around and noticed a small lightning rod fixed to the roof of the house, keeping everything else from being struck. The lightning wasn't going to come to them. But thankfully, the world didn't stop moving, and the Copper Golem had an idea. It dashed to the room of chests and looked through the pile of items. It might not have known what most of these were, But there was one thing it understood. The scaffolding. The golem raced back outside and placed down a piece of the scaffolding. It took a few moments for it to fully understand how the item worked, but it knew it had to work quickly, because if the storm went away, then so did its chances. The golem was much slower than the other person was, but through sheer effort, it willed a staircase toward the roof. It carried the statue up to the first roof, but there was still so much further to go. Just as it had finished placing in the last steps, the copper golem's joints gave out a loud metal scraping. It struggled to place in the final pieces of scaffolding, as it realized it was oxidizing too. The golem wasn't discouraged. It pressed on, carrying the statue deliberately up its makeshift stairs. Its body croaked and groaned with each and every step, but as the sound of thunder grew louder and louder, it knew it was too close to its goal to give up now. Finally, they made it to the top. The copper golem, now struggling to even walk, approached the lightning rod, and with every remaining ounce of its strength, ripped it from the roof, sending it tumbling to the ground. The rain is lighter, the thunder quieter. The golem once again lifted the statue into the air. It has to work. The new golem buzzed to life. The lightning strike had replaced its blue color with a shiny, vibrant orange. It was good as new, but it was alone. Where were its items? The storage room? And where was... The golem took its 397,476 step as it cheerfully began another shift of storing items. The person drops an item into a chest. Though, this chest wasn't the same as the others in the storage room. This one was special. The world doesn't wait for anyone, but the best things take time. And as long as you look for it, purpose is a way of showing up in the most unexpected of places. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?